Urgent. OPEC in deep shit because of this. According to a new Argus survey released on Friday, OPEC output fell to 38.29 million barrels per day last month, falling 1.81 million barrels per day shy of its lowered limit. What is OPEC, you asked? Well, it is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and it is a 13-country cartel. In late 2016, a bigger organization named OPEC Plus was created to gain more influence over the global crude oil market. And that is the reason OPEC is losing out on a lot of sales and profit this year. Stay tuned till the end of the video to find out which of these organizations is oiling more profits and benefits. Founded on September 14, 1960 in Baghdad by 5 members, it has been based in Vienna, Austria since 1965, even though Austria is not an OPEC member state. As of September 2018, the 13-member countries accounted for an estimated 44% of global oil production and 81.5% of proven oil reserves, giving OPEC a significant influence on global oil prices that were previously determined by the so-called Seven Sisters grouping of multinational oil companies. Economists have described OPEC as a textbook example of a cartel that collaborates to decrease market competition, and whose consultations are protected by the idea of sovereign immunity under international law. Algeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, the Republic of Congo, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela are current members of the OPEC. Ecuador, Indonesia, and Qatar are former OPEC members. OPEC members produce over 40% of the world's oil, and their exports account for roughly 60% of the worldwide petroleum commerce. OPEC predicted that its member nations held more than 80% of the world's known oil reserves in 2021. Compared to the previous month, the 19 OPEC Plus nations subject to the quota produced 310,000 BPD fewer barrels in November. However, it is still 1.81 million barrels per day short of its November limit. The November limit was a 2 million barrels per day cut from October levels. However, it was anticipated that the group might still need to meet the lowered objective. OPEC has 13 member nations as of January 2020, 5 in the Middle East, like Western Asia, 7 in Africa, and 1 in South America. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, OPEC's combined rate of oil production, including gas condensate, equaled 44% of the global total in 2016, while OPEC accounted for 81.5% of global proven oil reserves. For nations that export relatively little petroleum, their limited bargaining leverage as OPEC members may not always outweigh the disadvantages imposed by OPEC output limitations and membership fees. Ecuador left OPEC in December of 1992 because it refused to pay the U.S. $2 million membership fee, which believed it needed to produce more oil than it was allowed to under the OPEC quota at the time. Ecuador rejoined in October of 2007, only to leave again in January 2020. On January 2, 2020, Ecuador's Ministry of Energy and Non-Renewable Natural Resources issued an official statement confirming Ecuador's exit from OPEC. Gabon suspended the membership in January 1995 due to similar concerns. It returned in July of 2016. Indonesia declared in May of 2008 that it would quit OPEC when its membership expired at the end of that year, owing to the country's status as a net importer of oil and the inability to achieve its output quota. It rejoined the group in January of 2016, but declared a temporary suspension of its membership at the end of the year when OPEC demanded a 5% drop in output. Qatar quit OPEC on January 1, 2019, after joining in 1961, to concentrate on natural gas production, of which it is the world's largest exporter in the form of liquefied natural gas. A new member nation must be approved by 3/4 of OPEC's current members, including all 5 founders. Sudan formally applied to join in October 2015, however, it is not yet a member. According to Argus, non-OPEC members of the OPEC Plus group perform better than the conventional OPEC members, increasing the total output by 460,000 BPD, an 8-month high. The majority of those gains came from Kazakhstan, which increased output by 330,000 BPD, and Russia, which increased production by 190,000 BPD after restarting Sakhalin 1. OPEC's crude output fell by 770,000 barrels per day in November, reaching a 6-month low. Saudi Arabia led the production declines, with its output falling by 440,000 BPD. According to Argus, the biggest laggards among the broader OPEC Plus group are Russia, which is producing 670,000 BPD less than the target, Nigeria, which is producing 530,000 BPD less than target, Angola, which is producing 350,000 BPD less than target, and Malaysia, which is producing 170,000 BPD less than target. Because of the group's significant market dominance, its actions have an impact on worldwide prices. Its members meet on a regular basis to arrange how much crude oil to sell to global markets. By pushing more oil into the market, the consortium may also cut prices. Geopolitics and OPEC. Some of OPEC's output cutbacks have had a substantial worldwide economic consequences. The most well-known example was when the Arab members placed an embargo on the United States and other nations that supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War in 1973. It is referred to as the first oil shock because it caused oil prices to triple in 3 months, creating gasoline shortages in the United States, and is seen as one of the reasons for a lengthy economic crisis in the United States and internationally in the 1970s. Other important geopolitical events that have had substantial influence on oil prices include the 1980s Iran-Iraq conflict, the 1990-91 Gulf War, and the 1997 Asian financial crisis, plus the 2007-2008 global financial crisis. Crude oil prices just plummeted in mid-2020 as governments throughout the world went into lockdown. Following this, OPEC Plus members resolved to cut production by 10 million barrels per day, around 10% of the world output, in an attempt to push prices back up. So why is OPEC Plus seen as being more powerful than OPEC? Well, OPEC's 14 members control 35% of global oil supplies, as well as 82% of known reserves. With the ascension of 10 non-OPEC nations as OPEC Plus, including several key countries like Russia, Mexico, and Kazakhstan, the percentage of holdings has climbed to 55% and 90% respectively. This gives OPEC Plus greater power over the global economy than OPEC nations. The importance of OPEC Plus for India. India has spent around $120 billion on crude oil imports totaling 228 million metric tons. Iraq is India's top importer, followed by Saudi Arabia, Iran, Nigeria, the United Arab Emirates, and India buys over $23 billion in oil from Iraq each year. Mexico, Malaysia, Oman, and Russia are all the OPEC Plus nations from whom India purchases oil. It also spends more than $10 billion on imports. Although the volume range is significantly less, simpler reports can never be denied. Hence, non-OPEC or OPEC Plus nations are equally vital to India. The recent step by OPEC Plus has sparked debate. Russia's war in Ukraine is the most recent worldwide catastrophe to affect the oil market. Sanctions imposed by the EU and the US on Russia have targeted its crude oil and petroleum product exports. The price of Russian petroleum has decreased, but the country is now exporting more of it to nations that have not slapped sanctions on Moscow, such as China and India. OPEC Plus resolved in October to decrease output by 2 million barrels per day, the largest drop since April of 2020. It claims the action is completely based on economic grounds and wants to maintain oil market stability and balance. It maintains that the cut was made unanimously by its members. The judgment has been harshly condemned in the United States. It claims that the cut will increase Russia's oil profits and that it was undertaken for political purposes. But OPEC, led by Saudi Arabia, rejects this. According to the International Energy Agency, whose members include the United States and other oil-consuming countries, the drop in output might be the tipping point that sends the globe into recession. Whatever the reasons, the OPEC Plus recent decision demonstrates the group's capacity to influence oil prices and the global economy. Oman, Kazakhstan, Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, Algeria and Gabon are among the countries who reached or surpassed their production targets. Non-OPEC members underproduced by 92,000 BPD overall, while OPEC countries subject to quotas underproduced by 90,000. Crude oil prices have significantly fallen this week, causing some to speculate that the OPEC Plus group may reduce oil supply to support crude prices. Brent oil was expected to end the week with more than $10 lower than it began, well below what experts believed the OPEC's price protection trigger. On Wednesday, OPEC Plus decided to make significant cutbacks in oil output, reducing supplies in an already tight market and creating one of the organization's worst conflicts with the West, with the U.S. administration calling the unexpected move stupid. Saudi Arabia, OPEC's de facto head, said 2 million barrels per day BPD drop in output was equivalent to 2% of the world's supply, was required in response to increasing interest rates in the West and a weakening global economy. The monarchy rejected accusations that it was conspiring with Russia, a member of the OPEC Plus group, to raise prices, and claimed that the West was often motivated by wealth arrogance when criticizing the organization. The White House stated that President Joe Biden will continue to consider the release of more strategic oil supplies to lower prices. What do you think of OPEC and OPEC Plus? Let us know in the comments, and see you in the next video. Have a good day. Ciao.